How's it going? And welcome back to another episode of Mood for Feud. I'm your host Katya, and today I am in the mood to talk about BookTok Feuds. We are going to get into some of the biggest controversies and scandals from the BookTok community. I feel like people might think BookTok is this kind of nerdy, super wholesome, unproblematic space, and it definitely can be that. But my god, it is home to some of the most nastiest feuding, some of the craziest scandals that I've ever seen. So I'm very, very interested to get into it. Remember, if you enjoy the show and would like to support it, then please do leave a rating. You can leave a comment on Spotify, written review on Apple Podcast, and you can follow the show so you never miss an episode. I'm also on socials at Mood for Feud, and I'm always looking to chat pop culture, so send me a message there. I'm very excited to talk about this one because I love reading. It is definitely one of those hobbies that I've had ever since I was a kid. I was that child that preferred to sit in the library and read my book rather than go and hang out with the other children. My best friend growing up was also a reader, so we would have sleepovers and both just sit there and read our books, and it was bliss. Genuinely one of my favorite types of hangouts is you come round, we make some snacks, we get cozy, and then we both just read. Heaven, absolute heaven. Thanks to the BookTok community, I can combine my two interests of reading and pop culture feuding and find a way to pivot an episode to be about books. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, as they say, can I vibe check two of my reading quirks that I have been mildly made fun of for having, but I just know in my heart of hearts that there are other people who do this. So, okay, let me know if you do any of these, or let me know if you have a reading quirk that you want to vibe check with the Mood for Feud community as well. You can leave a comment. My number one reading quirk is that when I read a book, I don't just picture random faces. I will cast the characters to be either celebrities, actors, or people that I've seen in my real life. And I don't know if this is just because I lack imagination to design faces, but I also just find it really fun to think about oh, okay, which actor would be able to play the lead role here? And it's also very fun because in my imaginary casting, there are no problematic actors, okay? So I can cast James Franco and he's not a creep. And also they all have the ability to act very well. There are no dud actors, and also you're allowed to change their hair color, eye color, whatever you want to suit the vibe. So yeah, let me know if you also do that. My second reading quirk, probably a bit more controversial, is that I get jump frights when I read a scary book. I will physically jolt or jump. And I've been made fun of this one a little bit because it's how can a word be scary, right? But listen, when I'm reading, I don't see the words, okay? When I'm in the groove, it's I'm watching a movie. I'm watching the movie in my head. And so, especially when someone's snooping around or somewhere where they shouldn't be, and if they get caught, another character bursts into the room or something, I will physically be oh my god, and get a fright. I just know that there's someone else out there who experiences this. So let me know if you also get jump scares from reading. I thought I would start with a little intro into what BookTok actually is. So BookTok refers to content on TikTok that is about, surprise, surprise, books, obviously. It was probably one of the earlier sub-communities to come out of what I would call mainstream TikTok, TikTok post 2019. And this is very much back when content was very obviously divided into the different talks. I remember being on Witch Talk, Clean Talk, and of course my favorite, Prison Talk. And BookTok, I would say, is probably one of the biggest sub-communities of TikTok to break out into other platforms. I feel like the word is kind of mainstream now, and I feel like even if you aren't on TikTok, you've probably heard of BookTok. The other one that comes to mind for me that has really broken out of the app is Mom Talk, which of course led to the TV show Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So the first time I realized how big BookTok's reach actually was, I want to say it was maybe around late 2020. I was in an airport and one of those airport bookshops had a stand that was titled #BookTok. And on this stand was all the books trending at the time: Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Song of Achilles, yada yada. Nowadays, I feel like the BookTok shelf is just stock standard in every single library and bookstore. But when I tell you, in late 2020, I was shocked that this subgroup from this little social media app could actually have such a real world impact. And BookTok did grow pretty quickly. I feel like publishers and authors especially really took note of the power it had in driving sales, kind of similar to how TikTok heavily influences the music industry. Book sales were dramatically also increased if they went viral on BookTok. And it didn't even need to be new books either. So, I'm thinking of It Ends With Us, which was originally published in 2016, but saw a massive spike in sales in 2021 because of BookTok, and then ended up being #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And then by October 2022, there was even a sequel published. And then other examples are like The Secret History, for example, which was originally published in 1992. And I would argue A Court of Thorns and Roses also falls into this category, because even though ACOTAR was quite popular when it first came out, I want to say that was around 2015, it was nowhere near as mainstream as it is now. I mean, I could say ACOTAR to my boyfriend and he would know what I'm talking about, So it's definitely a very powerful group online. And I definitely was very drawn to BookTok. Obviously, I love reading, but the other reason is that if I read a book from BookTok, it meant that I immediately had access to all this discourse, all of these reviews and ratings, and even just funny little joke videos or memes or skits or whatever that were about that book. And so you get that feeling of, oh my god, yay, I have people to talk about these books with, which I do really enjoy. Now, I went digging for some articles talking about BookTok, and I found it very interesting because all of the articles from around 2020, 2021 are fairly positive. They talk about the impacts of BookTok with smaller or self-published authors being able to gain massive followings and amass new readers online. It also talked about how BookTok was getting a lot of people back into reading, and I was definitely one of those people, because after leaving high school, I did stop reading for 3 years. I think I read maybe 2 books in that whole duration, so not very many at all. BookTok really encouraged me to get back into it. It was also described in one article as being the last wholesome corner of the internet, which kind of makes me feel a bit sad, because this definitely differs significantly with how BookTok is discussed in today's day and age. And it makes sense, because I feel like most things online, the bigger they get, the less fun they become, especially as #capitalism enters the chat and we have publishing agencies really capitalizing on virality and BookTok and faking virality or using it as a marketing tool, which is kind of annoying and takes away for me from the social media experience, which is meant to be driven by the normies. But definitely another reason I do think BookTok is very heavily criticized on a global scale is because I don't want to be that person. I'm going to be that friend that's too woke, but it's predominantly comprised of women, the BookTok community. Not exclusively, obviously, but predominantly. And I find that any internet cultures that are predominantly occupied by women do eventually become the target of this kind of mass critique. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like fandoms. I feel like fandom culture was another one that just gets such a bad rap in the headlines. So a couple of the things that BookTok gets criticized for, as I mentioned, major publishing agencies getting in and amongst BookTok kind of ruined it a bit. I've seen authors make videos saying they're upset because, publishers want books that will trend on BookTok. And so they want manuscripts that follow tried and true tropes, and they're much less receptive to things that kind of push normalcy or stretch the creative boundary a little. And we definitely see this with other industries as well. Every music label wants a song that can have a TikTok dance made to it, and every movie wants to be a remake or a sequel or a prequel. There's this real hesitancy in entertainment and in publishing to back an idea that is fresh because they're too risky. We don't know if they will hit or not. And this kind of also means that a lot of books seem a little bit monotonous lately because they are following those kind of tried and true plot lines. Another thing with BookTok is it really saw the rise of romantasy as a genre, I would argue, and romance books in general that have a lot of spice, referring to kind of, smutty content. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy reading a bit of smut myself, and I do really enjoy romance. But I think it's kind of got to the point where a lot of people who are part of BookTok will kind of measure how good a book is based on the level of spice. Like, I've seen people give reviews that are like, this book was really boring because there was no spice. I get that if it was targeted or marketed as a spicy book, but some of these aren't. Like, some of these are just fiction. They're not meant to be full of smut. But spice has definitely become one of those metrics on BookTok. The other issue with this is that there are, of course, a lot of minors on TikTok, and so there are these kids being recommended spicy books from BookTok and wanting to read them because they're going viral. And especially if their parents aren't aware that these are smutty books. There were those PSAs going round to parents that the book Icebreaker is in fact not appropriate for preteens or even young teens because it was pretty spicy. I read that book and even in parts I was like, Jesus Christ, I need to go to church. But it's tricky because I feel like when I was growing up and I was that age, I would know that a book isn't age appropriate for me because anything with smut would immediately have on the cover a man's abs or something like that. It was very obviously erotic. Whereas nowadays with Icebreaker, for example, the cover looks like it could be marketed for 12-year-olds. It's cartoon, it looks fun, there's lots of bright colors. That was definitely another aspect of BookTok that got a lot of heat. There was also controversies with book reviewers saying they didn't like a book for whatever reason and then receiving hate comments from the community. And this was a big issue with people kind of conflating a bad review as being synonymous with bullying an author. There are definitely good and bad ways to go about saying you didn't like something. And this actually does relate to the first feud, which we are going to get to in a second. And then most recently, I've seen discourse about BookTok contributing to the rise of anti-intellectualism, which describes the act of consuming media without any critical thought. What some people might describe as reading for fun. In my mind, what kind of kicked off this whole anti-intellectualism discourse is that one video of the girl saying she did not finish one of the books she was reading because it had too many words. To me, this was one of those kind of rage baity BookTok videos, but it instantly hit mainstream media and made a ton of headlines. It was really associated with brain rot and the alarmingly short attention spans that a lot of younger people have nowadays, and older people, to be honest. I feel like TikTok is brain rotting all of us. But I was starting to see headlines like Gen Z don't want to read books because there's words in them, and I was like, okay, it's a handful of videos on the BookTok community. Let's not extrapolate this to an entire generation. But I think this anti-intellectualism discourse definitely extends to the rising apathy, particularly in Gen Z, the kind of it's not that deep mentality, which really shuts down any kind of critical thinking because if everything is not that deep, then nothing is really worth analyzing. And I think there are a couple of different arguments here. There's the people saying that with the current state of the world, we can't afford to switch off critical thinking and that we do have to think about the media that we're consuming. And then you have the people saying, I've just come home from my 9 to 5. I don't want to fucking think. I just want to switch off. Let me have my fucking escapism and chill out for 2 fucking seconds. So, and I feel like my 2 cents is kind of somewhere in the middle. I do think it's kind of elitist to condemn people for not thinking critically. But then I do also think it's important when we engage with any media, whether that's a book, a film, a TV show, whatever, to kind of be inquisitive about it. I think we can do both. I think you can read a lighthearted book for fun and then also wonder why did that character behave a certain way? Or think about some of those common themes, or maybe think about the communities that were missing from the story. Why were they excluded? So to me, critical thought can really be as simple as asking yourself, like, why do I enjoy some books and not others? Or why do certain characters appeal to me more than others? What do they all have in common? It doesn't always have to be this in-depth, critical, textual analysis, citing 14 different sources. So I think at the end of the day, the barrier of entry to reading should really be as low as possible, and we kind of need to be encouraging all reading as being good reading. Anyway, that is my intro to BookTok. It is much longer than I thought it was going to be, but I do find the community quite interesting. Let's get into our first feud. We are going to talk about Larry Reads the BookToker versus the author Rina Kent. This one stems back to March 2025. So Larry Reads the BookToker. She's got 701,000 on TikTok, and this whole thing kind of kicked off because Larry Reed gave a negative review to one of Rina Kent's books titled Kiss the Villain. And in her review, Larry reveals that she couldn't finish the book. She had to stop reading it at about the 50% mark, and that she was really surprised because she really anticipated this to be a great book. She reveals that she loves Rina Kent's previous work. She's read a lot of her other series and novels, but that this book just didn't do it for her. Is the review a little harsh? Maybe. She's definitely not sugarcoating anything, but to be honest, it's no worse than what I feel comfortable writing into a Goodreads review that the authors are going to see, because I feel like most authors obsessively read their 1-star reviews on Goodreads. So to me, it was kind of like standard for a negative review. I think the other thing to note is that Larry does keep saying that this is her personal opinion, and that if you enjoy the book, then that's great. She's definitely not discouraging her readers from reading it. She's kind of just telling them that she herself didn't enjoy it. And then the other thing to me that makes this negative review okay is that she does also have specific things that she's critiquing, rather than just saying, I hate it for no reason. She's actually giving what I would consider constructive criticism. For example, she says one of the characters keeps saying that he's super crazy, and her suggestion was for him to just show the reader that he's super crazy. And then she also says that as someone who's read a lot of Rina Kent's work, this book kind of just felt like a copy and paste from other stories. So to me, those are both valuable bits of feedback. Now, at the time Rina Kent was actually following Larry's TikTok account, I will say I always appreciate when a creator, especially a reviewer, will give their honest opinion even when they know that the creator of that work is following them, because it makes them more authentic. And I think being mutuals with someone online doesn't mean you're automatically not allowed to say anything bad about their work. However, after Larry posts her review, Rina Kent does actually unfollow her. This is kind of ironic because a TikToker named Crystal Ramos had actually commented on Larry's review saying, "Careful, Rina Kent will probably block you for expressing your opinion, like she did to me." Of course, Rina has the right to follow, unfollow whatever content doesn't serve her, right? Would I personally, if I was Rina Kent, have unfollowed Larry over this? Probably not. I think 90% of the time, Larry is really praising this author. She is a fan. She even has a tattoo, which has a book quote from Rina's novel God of Fury. But I can also understand if maybe she was not in the right headspace. I think to me, if one of my listeners was praising 99% of the episodes I put out, and then said that one of the episodes didn't really hit for them and gave some constructive reasons as to why, that kind of feedback to me would be gold. But again, I do kind of see that if you're not in the right headspace to see negative reviews, then it makes sense to unfollow. So yeah, I don't think it was that bad. Some people were like, that was shady of her. She should not have unfollowed Larry over one bad review. Not to be Gen Z about it, but I'm kind of it's not that deep. Here's where things get a little bit dicey, because Larry does make a TikTok about being unfollowed by Rina. It's definitely lighthearted in tone, she's kind of just showing Rina Kent unfollowing her, and it says POV, you post a negative Rina Kent review. It's posted to the Gracie Abrams song I Miss You, I'm Sorry, and it's kind of her like fake crashing out because her favorite author has unfollowed her. But it was, as I mentioned, it was like lighthearted. You could kind of tell that she was joking around. Larry gets flamed for this in the comments because obviously people didn't know that, like, unless you were a TikTok sleuth, you wouldn't know that Rina had unfollowed her. And people were a little bit divided. Like, there were some people who felt like Larry exposing Rina Kent unfollowing her was kind of putting the author on blast for no reason. And then other people felt like Rina was petty for unfollowing her in the first place. What do we think? What do we think? I will say following etiquette is so stressful in this day and age. Like, it is such a petty form of retaliation, but I also at the same time feel like we read into it too much. You know, the hate for Larry did get pretty bad to the point where she had to make a follow-up video explaining that she was just making a joke and that she wasn't offended by Rina unfollowing her, and that, you know, she just saw an opportunity to do a funny video. So BookTok definitely exacerbated this drama, but I think it pulls up that interesting thing that I was talking about where people don't love when people give a negative review, and also people are a lot more sensitive online these days, I think. Okay, the next feud I want to talk about is the Cait Corrain scandal. This one's crazy. So Cait Corrain was a very promising debut author. She had a 2-book publishing deal with Del Rey Books, which is an imprint for Random House Group. It was like kind of a big deal. Like, their fantasy book was titled Crown of Starlight. She also had film rights to this. They were going to be featured in a book subscription box, which specializes in exclusive editions and also releases merch alongside the novel. You know, early release reviewers had written really positive reviews. Like, this was a hotly anticipated fantasy book. So Crown of Starlight is described as a spicy, queer, sci-fi reimagining of the Greek tale of Ariadne and Dionysus, and it was set to be published May 14th, 2024. And it was kind of targeted towards fans of Sarah J. Maas and Jacqueline Carey, so it was really going to be the next big thing in the romantasy genre, which of course fares incredibly well on TikTok. Here's where things get weird, because there are some other authors who are also going to be debuting their first traditional publishing print novel in 2024, and they start noticing some kind of sus activity on Goodreads from multiple accounts that are leaving their debut novels bad ratings and reviews. These books are set to be published in 2024, so they haven't actually been released yet when all of these negative reviews and ratings start popping up, which means it would have to be from early access readers, right? And a lot of these authors with upcoming debut books kind of started talking about this, and what they realized is that their spike in negative ratings and reviews were all coming from the same like 9 or 10 Goodreads accounts. Very weird. Now, this group of Goodreads accounts, it's not exclusively just rating and reviewing these debut authors, but definitely a vast majority of their reviews were focused on these authors. And then the other very sus thing is that a lot of the bad reviews were targeting authors of color. Strange. And these reviews weren't even just like, I didn't like the story or I didn't enjoy the book. They were kind of mean. I'm not gonna lie. So one of them read, "This was legitimately awful and everyone who liked it should be ashamed of themselves." And then another review read, "This was so bad, I'm actually writing a review about it. It's terrible. Everyone who says otherwise is on drugs." And then we have another bad review, which was left on an author's book who was part of the same imprint, Del Rey Books, that Cait Corrain was also signed up to. This one reads, "I can't believe Del Rey spent $500,000 on this when they could have spent $500,000 on anything else. Sorry, not sorry." And I think this review in particular stuck out to this author because early access readers don't generally know the ins and outs of how much money a publishing agency spent on a book. That's kind of like, that wouldn't really be public knowledge. Now, the other weird thing that all of these Goodreads accounts had in common is that they had all rated Crown of Starlight, which is Cait Corrain's book, 5 stars. And they had also liked other 5-star reviews and had been voting Crown of Starlight on Goodreads lists that featured the book. So for example, a list for best adult queer romances or books I'm dying to get my hands on. And these accounts were also liking each other's reviews. So it was clear that there was like a link between them all. And so the impacted authors start talking about this sus activity. You know, all evidence points to the fact that it's Cait themselves who is behind all of these Goodreads fake accounts. And I guess the biggest piece of evidence is that one of the authors actually notices that one of Cait's confirmed personal accounts, like they know for a fact that this account is Cait's, had actually been voting Crown of Starlight on the exact same lists as the other Goodreads accounts. So it's kind of like the odds of Cait finding the same lists as these burner accounts without them all being run by the same person is kind of slim, because there are a lot of lists on Goodreads. So the impacted authors, they all know each other, by the way. They're all part of the same Slack channel because they're all kind of about to make their debut in the upcoming year, right? So they're in connections. They're like their colleagues or peers, essentially. So these impacted authors actually approach Cait and give them an opportunity to fix this privately, which, to be honest, that's more grace than I would give if I saw someone who I had messaged with or who I kind of even knew talking shit about my books behind a burner account. Like, come on. They approach Cait and Cait essentially tells them to just let it go. They're not admitting that it's them behind the accounts. Now, this is kind of all happening behind closed doors, obviously, but one of the authors, Shiran J. Zhao, they decide to make it semi-public by posting a tweet that says, if you as a debut author are going to make a bunch of fake Goodreads accounts one-star bombing fellow debuts you're threatened by, can you at least not make it so obvious by upvoting your own book on a bajillion different lists with those same accounts? So I feel like Shiran was giving Cait a chance to kind of rectify, but also showing Cait, like, I will make this public if you don't sort this shit out, you know? Shiran also tweets, I'm not going to leak the extensive receipts so I don't ruin this person's career before it even starts, but if they do anything further in a similar vein, action will be taken. And behind closed doors, they are taking action. They approach Cait's editor, make them known of Cait's behavior on Goodreads. The day after Cait's editor is notified, some of these fake accounts are taken down, and Cait also takes to Twitter to say the following. Nasty surprise of the day was learning that there were fake accounts messing with my Goodreads ratings recently. If you've actually read my book and want to rate and review it, that would be great, as reader interest pre-release tells my publisher that my book is worth investing in. They also tweet, I guess this explains why my rating was fluctuating so much. If you like my book, please rate and review it. If you hated it, you're entitled to share your opinion, but making fake accounts to manipulate my book rating is something else entirely. I'm gonna go be sad now. So it really seems like Cait is trying to lump herself in with the other authors who were impacted and kind of being like, oh my god, you guys, this has been happening to me too. Like, I'm also a victim, which is kind of crazy though, because as I mentioned, all of those accounts had given Crown of Starlight 5 stars. So it's like, who's rating your book badly, honey? Like, nobody. Now, the other authors are obviously not buying it, and they're still understandably pissed, and they want to take further action. And then an associate of Cait's contacts Shiran with screenshots of a message conversation happening between Cait and Cait's friend Lily. And this friend Lily is someone who Cait allegedly knows from the Reylo fandom. And Reylo, if you don't know, is the ship name for Rey and Kylo Ren from Star Wars. And Cait was very prominent in the Reylo fandom. Cait had written fanfiction. I think this is where they sort of got their first start in writing, or at least amassed a readership. So yeah, this friend Lily is allegedly from this fandom. And in this text thread, Cait is basically finding out that their friend Lily is behind these accounts. The whole message thread is actually pretty long, but I will just read out a couple of the messages. So here's one from Lily. The other night, when you were worrying that your book would get overshown by bigger books at your publisher, I wanted to help. So I made a couple accounts to rate your book high. I'm sorry, I didn't think it would be a problem. Cait replies, what the fuck? Why? I don't need fake reviews to help me. Jesus Christ. And this is all in caps. And then Lily replies, I'm sorry, I really didn't think it would hurt. I was trying to be nice. Cait responds, oh my god, I don't even know what to say. I don't need you to step in and try to be nice with this. Do you have any idea how patronizing that is? How humiliating. How much damage could you have done? I'm going to be sick. Literally going to vomit. Someone just posted this screenshot in my writing group, and it's the screenshot from Sheridan's tweet saying, if you're going to, as a debut author, make a bunch of fake accounts, please be less obvious. Cait writes, please, for the love of God, tell me you weren't actually stupid enough to use the same accounts that you made to boost me to bomb other people. And Lily replies, I didn't think anyone would notice. Cait's like, I'm literally going to be... I actually love this. I kind of want to do like a dramatic reading of this whole text thread. Cait's like, I'm literally going to be sick. I need to email my agent. This could literally cost me my fucking career. I don't even know what to say. This is such a violation of my trust and of our friendship. Lily, I'm so sorry, Cait. I'm really sorry. I didn't think it would hurt. Cait, how much of the... do you guys remember this from Tumblr when you'd be like so lost for words? You would just type like a bunch of letters. Yeah. Cait writes that. How could it not hurt? Who the fuck did you go after? She's like, names. I need names of everyone who you hurt with these fake accounts. So this goes on, as I mentioned. At one point, Cait tells Lily, this is psychopath behavior, which I agree with. And Lily says, I'm sorry, I was only trying to help. And, please forgive me. And I guess the big dramatic apex is Cait telling Lily, they've really humiliated them and they've really hurt them. So it's really, really bad. Then there's like a little plot twist and Lily starts to 180 on Cait. At first, Lily is saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Cait says, fuck off, rotten hell, don't ever speak to me again. And then Lily says, actually, no, I'm not sorry. I was just trying to help. Yeah, I messed up, but I was trying to be a good friend. It's not that big a deal. And if it is, maybe you should try being nicer. If your career is so fragile that something like this could break it, then maybe I should keep going. And then Lily starts threatening Cait and is like, I'm going to post more reviews. I'm going to make you look like an even worse person. And Lily tells Cait that they're pathetic and that their book is terrible and they're gonna regret this. The last message from Lily that I'll read out, which is kind of like psycho, is, I just remembered something important. A lot of my bad reviews were for POC authors. When the call out post eventually comes for you, they'll call you a racist too. You're welcome, bitch. This Lily sounds like a piece of work. Whoever sends these screenshots to Sheridan is kind of trying to say, see, look, it's not Cait, it's actually this psycho that Cait knows from the Raylo fandom called Lily. But Sheridan is understandably sus because in Lily's message, it makes it sound like the bad review thing was a recent activity. Lily says the other day when you were complaining about being overshadowed. But these negative reviews go back to April 2023. And in the current timeline, we're in December. So this is like a 6 or 7 month long affair. Now, in the Slack channel that all the 2024 debuts have, Cait decides to stick their hand up and say that she was actually the author that Sheridan is tweeting about, but that it was actually her friend Lily who was behind these accounts, and then they share the same set of screenshots that the associate had also shared with Sheridan. And the authors aren't buying it. They ask for any kind of proof from Cait that Lily is a real person, and Cait keeps deflecting, is unable to provide anything, and decides to eventually leave the Slack chat. So Cait is not taking any accountability and continuing to add fuel to the fire with this Lily character. So Sheridan decides to post a 31-page Google Doc with screenshot evidence of the fake accounts to their Twitter, and this is when this whole ordeal becomes public. Because till then, only the authors knew that Sheridan's tweet was about Cait. So the public knew there was a debut author causing shit, but no one actually knew who specifically it was. And of course, immediately there is a ton of discourse, and members of the Raylo fandom are coming forward to Sheridan and saying they've scoured the fandom message boards and chats, and they can't find any evidence of a fandom member called Lily. Someone then even performed a textual analysis of the text thread between Cait and Lily and compared this to Cait's old Raylo fanfic and found that the textual analysis revealed it was written by the same person. Another person also said they used to edit for Cait and they can recognize their writing voice pretty easily, and that they believe Cait was writing both messages on the thread. And the craziest thing to me about this all is like the dialogue between Cait and Lily, as much fun as I had reading it out, was pretty bad. It's pretty cringy dialogue, which makes me worried for Crown of Starlight. I mean, I hope there wasn't going to be a lot of dialogue in that story, because I don't think dialogue is Cait's forte. So after all of this really publicly blows up, on December 11th, Cait decides to post an apology statement, which I will read out. Dear friends, family, readers, fellow authors, and members of the publishing community. Since June 2022, I've been fighting a losing battle against depression, alcoholism, and substance abuse, the full scope of which I've hidden from everyone in my life out of shame and a misguided belief that with the right medicine or enough therapy, I could beat it. In late November 2023, I started a new medication, and on December 2nd, 2023, I suffered a complete psychological breakdown. During this time, I created roughly 6 profiles on Goodreads, and along with 2 profiles I made during a similar but shorter breakdown in 2022, I boosted the rating of my book, bombed the ratings of several fellow debut authors, and left reviews that ranged from kind of mean to downright abusive. 2 of those authors, Molly X. Chang and Danielle Jensen, are fellow Del Rey authors. Camilla Cole and Bethany Baptiste just happened to be on the wrong Goodreads list at the wrong time. I felt no ill will towards any of them. It was just my fear about how my book would be received running out of control. My memories of this are extremely fussy, so it's possible there are a couple of other authors. If so, please know I take full ownership of what I did to you as well. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. There's nothing I can say to erase what I did to you. When I was slapped on the wrist by Goodreads and vague tweeted by a handful of people, I panicked that my secret was about to get out, and rather than taking responsibility for my actions, I tried to cover my tracks. Still, in the middle of this breakdown, I made up the world's sloppiest chat with a non-existent friend who was supposedly to blame, and sent fake apologies for the actions of said friend, which only makes things worse. I betrayed the confidence of my agent, my pub team, my readers, and my friends, and betrayed my own deeply held values. I also dragged one of my dearest friends and fellow debut authors into the mud with me when she came to my defense. I'll leave her name out of this so as not to pull her in even deeper. However, if she wishes to come forward, I'll apologize to her as well. Let me be extremely clear. While I might not have been sober or of sound mind during this time, I accept responsibility for the pain and suffering I caused, and my delay in posting this due to spending the last few days offline while going through withdrawal as I sobered up enough to be brutally honest with you and myself. I know some of you won't forgive me, and I recognize you're not required to. No one ever wants to be judged by their worst actions, but that's not always up to us. I'll be reaching out to everyone impacted. And then she goes on to say she's going to take some time off social media and is going to go forward trying to live her life in a way that shows you these aren't empty words. That's obviously very horrific, if Cait's going through a mental break, and I understand that they would have been feeling a lot of pressure having their debut coming up. There's probably a lot of jealousy and comparison circling around. I get all that. What I don't get is, why did Cait target authors of color? What part of the crash out, drug-induced, whatever caused that? And this is kind of something that the other authors also bring up. For example, Bethany Baptiste wrote, "Wrong time, wrong list. No, we were exactly where we were supposed to be. I have PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I understand that the wrong meds or dose can make your mind feel like it's snapping in half. Meds don't make you racist. Racism is in you. You hid it by lurking and plotting." And this is very true, because as we recall in the messages between Cait and Lily, which Cait has now admitted was just her, there's the message from Lily that says, "I just remembered something important. All of these bad reviews were for POC authors." So they were deliberately, literally targeting authors of color. And I agree. I don't know a drug that makes you racist. I think that's just from within. The day after Cait posts their apology, Del Rey Books posts on Twitter and acknowledges that they will no longer be going forward with publishing Crown of Starlight. And then Cait's agent also drops them, tweeting, "What I do know is that mental illness neither explains nor excuses racism." And yeah, Crown of Starlight I don't think has been published to this day. It has a 1.67 rating on Goodreads, and yeah, it's such a shame. Imagine ruining your own career in this way. Now, of course, review bombing authors of color is fucking yuck behavior, but the other crazy thing is that Cait was review bombing authors from the same imprint and publishing agency, and authors that were supposedly their friend. Like, for example, Cait targeted 2 authors, Ellie Hazelwood and Taya Guanzon, who had previously written Reylo fanfiction and were now successful authors. Like, these were peers whose trajectory Cait could have followed, having also made their starts to writing in the Reylo fanfiction space. And Taya Guanzon had even written an endorsement for Crown of Starlight after Cait asked them to do so to kind of boost the book and get hype around it. I don't know. Imagine like these people rooting for you and wanting your book to be successful, and your way of thanking them is to review bomb them. It's kind of crazy. To me, it's also strange because it's not like people will only read books from one author. People read so many books within a year, and if someone who writes similar content to you is doing well, you're going to benefit from this. So if anything, it would make more sense for Cait to like boost books from the same imprint, boost books from the same category, boost authors who have a similar trajectory to them, you know, rising tides raise all ships or whatever. But like, I guess some people just don't see big picture like that. But also Cait was gonna do well. Cait had 2 book publishing deal. Like, Crown of Starlight was gonna be featured in a subscription box. Like, why? Oh man. Some people are their own worst enemy. Now, someone has since also made a Goodreads list of all the impacted books so people can easily go and support the authors who were targeted during Cait's review bombing. But yeah, my God. I think the craziest thing to me is that text thread. I'm like, I need somebody to act that out for me. That is nuts. Let's move on to the next scandal, which happened in 2023 when it was revealed that a self-published romance author named Susan Meechan had faked her own death. I told you guys, the book community is so wild. So this kind of first went down in September 2020 when Susan's daughter wrote on Facebook that her mum had tragically died by suicide. And Susan had made this Facebook group for like-minded readers and authors to all come together. And I think there were about 700 people in this group. And they were understandably heartbroken when they first heard that Susan had tragically passed away. Now, pretty quick, rumors start to swirl that the reason Susan took her life is because she was being bullied by other authors. And this then started a lot of finger pointing and blaming, and it turned pretty nasty. Like, someone who was part of the group at the time said it was a really terrible time. Everyone was bringing up any little thing anyone had ever said about Susan and saying it's your fault, and people were feeling really fucking bad. Now, 2 years after Susan's death, to kind of honor her, the group decides to hold a fundraiser, and, you know, authors are doing book auctions in Susan's honor, and the whole event is kind of focused on spotlighting bullying, because that is essentially what was the cause of Susan to pass away. So imagine their surprise when Susan in January 2023 reveals that she is in fact resurrected. She is alive. You guys can all stop being sad. I'm actually okay. She reveals this by posting on social media. She admits that she staged her suicide and writes, "There's going to be tons of questions. I am in a good place now, and I'm hoping to write again. Let the fun begin." What the fuck, Susan? People are understandably pissed. I feel like Susan thought everyone was going to be like, oh my God, yay, you're alive. Like, thank God. And, you know, I'm sure a little bit of the reaction was, oh, you know, thank God that she didn't actually die. But I would say most of it was just people feeling absolutely pissed off. The other reason people were really annoyed about this all is because when Susan first, quote unquote, died, Susan's quote-unquote daughter was on the Facebook page, and people were, you know, contributing funds to help pay for Susan's funeral. Some of the other authors also helped to edit and promote Susan's last book that was still in progress when she died. So some people felt like this was low-key fraud, and I think they did actually take it to the police, but I don't think anything actually came of it. Some people did have suspicions that Susan was actually alive, and this is again because Susan's daughter, when making posts on the page, would make a lot of the same spelling errors that Susan was like known to make. And so there were actually a couple of people who did believe that Susan was still alive even before she announced it. Now, Susan herself said that she was actually being bullied, that much is true, and that she had admitted herself to a psych ward and then her family decided to take over the account. I don't really believe that. I think it was Susan all along. I don't think her daughter was the one posting. Okay, the last BookTok controversy I want to talk about is Luke Bateman, and this is definitely the most recent thing I've seen swirling on BookTok. Luke posted his first TikTok on the 22nd of April 2025. It was captioned, "Hello BookTok," and it's basically him saying his friends introduced him to BookTok and he really loves reading and fantasy, but up until now, he's never really had a community to talk about his love for books, and so he's interested in joining BookTok because he wants to find like-minded people who he can talk about books with. Luke says that because of his social circles, working in blue-collar work and living out in the country, it means that he's not always in contact with other people or other men who enjoy reading. He says, quote, "There's not a lot of emotional depth in the men around me. Not many readers." I felt this was a bit shady, no? Like, you can be in blue collar work and enjoy reading. Anyway, he also says from what he's seen, there's a lot of women on BookTok who are into smut, so he's going to try and delve into this. I guess what's important context here is that Luke is definitely a conventionally attractive man. He's got that kind of rugged look going on. He films a lot in his truck. He's wearing a cowboy hat and flannels. And I guess ironically, he's kind of like the main male character that would be in a BookTok romance novel. So he's like very much appealing to the BookTok community. This TikTok now has 2.1 million views, and the comments range from people thirsting to people giving genuine book recommendations, and of course a lot of women excited to see someone fresh in the community, especially someone who doesn't, like, quote, look like a typical BookToker, right? And this really does show us that the bar for men is on the fucking floor, because we should not be this excited for a man just because he reads. Anyway, I immediately got a couple of red flags when I saw this, and this is because I have trust issues, but it's also because I think whenever I see a man like entering a space that is predominantly occupied by women, my guard naturally goes up because I kind of assume there's going to be an ulterior motive. And I know that's unfair, and I know that that sucks, but like 9 out of 10 times it's kind of true. But anyway, so I was already a little bit sus with just how he was coming on, looking the way he looks, and going like, "Oh, I've heard you guys read smut. What is that? Oh, I should check that out. Oh my god, you guys." I don't know any men who have emotional depth like I do. You know, the whole vibe was giving me like, guys, I'm not like the other ones. I'm a nice man. I'm emotionally intelligent. I read, and I don't know. Those men always scare me more. So I was a little bit interested to see how this would pan out, because if he was genuine with his intentions, then like I would fucking love that. And of course, you know, it's cool to see, and I want more men to just be like open about their interests. And again, I'm not saying this towards all men who are part of BookTok, because I follow some men who are BookTokers and I love their content, and I love that they're part of the BookTok community. And I have men in my personal life who love romance novels and romantasy and watch Bridgerton, and we can chat about it and it's so much fun. They have a genuine interest in this, right? And it's cool to see them not be worried about, I don't know, fragile masculinity bullshit. Like, I love all of those men. I think the key difference with the way Luke came into BookTok is that he came into the community hyper aware that he was a man, and that this was kind of crazy of him. You know, like he came in with that kind of energy of like, "Oh my god, you guys, look, I'm okay to be in a women occupied space because I just love to read." I don't know. He was like too aware that he was a man making BookTok content. Whereas the other men who are BookTokers that I follow, their content is just about books, but they don't have this real like hyper consciousness about being a man. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling. Let's move on. Maybe I'm just being a hater. But yeah, as I said, I was interested to see what would happen. Now, Luke does continue to post book reviews and recommendations. He talks about how glad he is to be part of the community, and that, you know, growing up, he was often pretty ashamed of being a reader. And whenever he was traveling for sports, he would hide his books. He would sneak away into like a toilet cubicle to read. So all of this, like, obviously I'm so glad that Luke has found this community where he feels safe and comfortable to talk about reading. Like, that's fucking amazing. He's also got videos encouraging boys to get into reading, which again I think is very important because there are studies showing that reading increases empathy and the ability to connect with emotions and other humans. And so the more he keeps posting, the more I was like, okay, maybe this man is the real deal. Like, I was kind of excited. Then on the 25th of May, which is 1 month after Luke first joined TikTok, he announces that he has signed a 2-book deal with Atria and Simon & Schuster. And he says he cried when he found out, and he thanks everyone for the support. He says this is like a childhood dream for him. He even shares a photo of him crying, actually. And like, it's very sweet, right? Like, it's nice to see people realizing their childhood dreams. Then he says, I can't wait to write it. Which then people were like, what do you mean you can't? What? Like, it's not written? And so this leads people to believe that he has somehow managed to get a 2-book deal with a major publishing agency without even having written a manuscript. Like, this never happens in traditional publishing. You pretty much never just get handed a book deal. Like, that's crazy. Now, Atria did defend the people saying that he hasn't written anything by saying they would never sign someone without assessing their writing first. And then Luke since said he had submitted a writing sample, a chapter outline, and the synopsis for the series, which was roughly 10,000 words, which makes it a little bit better, but still not really. And like, people were understandably pissed off because, as we know, a lot of authors from marginalized backgrounds have a really tough time signing deals with traditional publishers, and they have to work for years and years and years for their writing to even get noticed. And their barrier to entry is so tough. And then here we see this man who, after 1 month of posting BookTok content, suddenly gets a 2-book publishing deal. I don't know, it all seemed a little bit frustrating. And you know, we see this not just with publishers, but with the film industry as well, placing a lot of weight on social followings ahead of other metrics like ability to act, or in this case, ability to write a book. Yeah. I don't know, it was really frustrating. And I do see some people defending Luke, saying, you know, like, we need to encourage men to be part of the BookTok community, which I get, but like, giving this man a platform with no merits aside from passion and a social media following seems like kind of strange to me. And I think the deal with Luke is like, it's highlighting the systemic issue with the publishing industry. And to me, it's less so about Luke as an individual. And I think this is definitely what I see a lot of people missing when they talk about this on TikTok, because they're like, oh my God, could you guys be any more jealous? Like, just be happy for the guy. It's his childhood dream. And I get it, but it's like, do you not see the issue with the fact that there are so many indie authors of color from different genders, from different backgrounds, who are diverse and have diverse voices and perspectives to contribute to the book community, and they are being overlooked and overshadowed, and this guy sits in his truck, makes a couple of TikToks, and gets a publishing deal. Like, do you see how it just shows that the publishing industry is still, when it boils down to it, despite women making up the most of the BookTok community, when push comes to shove, they will back a white man without blinking an eye. So yeah, it's about the industry values more than it is about Luke personally. I will say, if Luke is truly wanting to be a supportive member of the BookTok community, then I think this is his perfect opportunity to use his privilege and influence on the platform to spotlight authors who might otherwise be overlooked. For example, Luke lives in Australia, a country which has a pretty terrible history of colonization that results in Indigenous and First Nations peoples to this day being severely marginalized. And I don't know, I think I would like to see him using his power to uplift some of these voices and better the book community. The other kind of crazy thing about Luke is that he's not completely a random. He was actually a professional rugby league player who retired in 2019, and then in 2023 he was also on The Bachelor Australia. So he's not just like this random bloke from the country who loves to read, like he's actually kind of famous already. So this adds another layer, and now people are kind of wondering, like, how genuine Was it when he first just randomly started posting on BookTok? And, was this actually all just a big marketing ploy to ramp up to announce the publishing deal he had with Atria? And Atria has been known to do a lot of TikTok marketing, so it's definitely not a reach. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'm just gonna say my red flags went off for a reason, I think. Maybe not. Maybe he was being genuine and this was all just a happy coincidence. But yeah, as I said, I don't want to hate too much on Luke as an individual. Like, I would like to see him take this criticism on board and use his power to do some good. But I think it is a very disappointing reveal into how in 2025, an industry whose main consumers are women are still more willing to bet their dollar on a man. And that is all I have for this week's episode. This was a lot longer than I expected. Oh my goodness. I also didn't talk about all the feuds that I actually found. You guys, there were so many. So if you do want another book talk video at some point, let me know. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast if you enjoy the show, and please feel free to leave a written review or comment. I love my words of affirmation, and you can connect with me on socials at Mood for Feud. If you want to buy me a coffee, I have a link in the show notes, and all funds will go towards upgrading my podcast gear. I hope everyone is crushing their goals this week, and of course, keeping out of trouble. Don't get into any feuds, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye!